Hey everyone, and welcome to the 5 Bytes Podcast. I'm your host, Rory Monahan. The podcast, as always, is brought to you by my sponsors, and that includes Numescent, the inventors of the first and only cloud-native container management platform for Windows desktops, and also brought to you by Master Packager, an application packaging software that helps you build packages that end users love, enterprises want, and the Windows OS needs. If you enjoy the show each week, you have these awesome sponsors to thank. And now for some news. Microsoft has just released Windows 11 version 25H2, which is build 26200.5074 that is available in the release preview channel for customers to preview ahead of its general availability, which will be coming later this year. Windows 11 version 25H2 will be delivered as an enablement package. This means that Windows 11 version 24H2 and version 25H2 use a shared servicing branch, which Microsoft claims will make updating to 25H2 as simple as a restart. This release will remove PowerShell version 2 and Windows Management Instrument command line. This is something that's been covered on a previous episode of the podcast already. Version 25H2 will also bring the ability for IT admins to remove selected pre-installed Microsoft Store apps via group policy or via their MDM of choice, most likely Intune, I guess. ISOs for the release will be available for download via the Windows Insider ISO download page this week. Multiple vulnerabilities have been discovered in Citrix NetScaler ADC and NetScaler Gateway. This will affect versions ADC and Gateway 14.1 before 14.1-47.48, NetScaler ADC and NetScaler Gateway version 13.1 before 13.1-59.22, NetScaler ADC 13.1-FIPS and NDC PP before version 13.1-37.241-FIPS and NDCPP. Also, NetScaler ADC 12.1-FIPS and NDCPP before 12.1-55.330-FIPS and NDCPP. I hate when there's that many vulnerabilities and products to mention. It's such a pain. But anyway, the vulnerabilities themselves include CVE-2025-7775. This is a memory overflow vulnerability leading to remote code execution and or denial of service. This one gets a 9.2 out of 10 on the severity scale. There's also CVE-2025-7776, and this is a memory overflow vulnerability leading to unpredictable or erroneous behavior and denial of service. This one gets an 8.8 out of 10. There's also CVE-2025-8424, and this one's an improper access control on the NetScaler management interface and gets an 8.7 out of 10. Citrix shared steps to check if you are affected by this, as there are some mitigating factors to consider for each vulnerability, and they have released patches for these vulnerabilities too. So certainly patch, because bleepingcomputer.com has reported that the most high severity vulnerability I listed is already being exploited in the wild, and late last week, over 28,000 vulnerable NetScaler appliances were detected online and exposed on the internet via Shodan. So don't sleep on this one, it's already under attack. Patch now. Sticking with Citrix, Thomas Coatzing on LinkedIn shared that Citrix is now throwing unsupported warnings in CVAD 2311 or higher for those with perpetual licensing. Customers attempting to use a newer version with that licensing will receive a new warning that says your corporate Citrix environment is currently unsupported. This message appears even though the license itself is valid and perpetual. This is because Citrix checks the CSS expiry date during startup and flags environments as unsupported if CSS is outdated, even if the license is not. I think this is another one of those pain points that Citrix customers are going to be facing since the acquisition and the wholesale changes that have been made under the CSG I was going to say group, but group would be redundant. It's kind of similar to a lot of the pain that's being felt by the VMware customers since the Broadcom acquisition, and it's just unfortunate all around, in my opinion. This may be the most Citrix heavy episode in a long time, but the awesome Kevin Beaumont shared some worrying news stating Citrix patched CVE 2025 6543 in late June, which was listed back then as a denial of service vulnerability. But Kevin reports it actually allows remote code execution and was used for widespread compromise of NetScaler remote access systems and to maintain network access even after patching. Kevin claims that Citrix knew this and just didn't mention it. Kevin gives some advice to customers and shared a comprehensive report on the vulnerability and exploits by Dutch researchers. I won't go through that or Kevin's pretty damning take on NetScalers, but we'll share a link to his blog post on the topic with this episode, which is episode 402, and you can find a link to this over at 5bytespodcast.com. Remember the Windows Update issue that resulted in people receiving firewall-related event errors in Windows events? The one that could be safely ignored as it was related to an upcoming feature and was not a reason for concern? The same one that was reportedly patched in July, but people started to notice that the error was still present after rolling out the Windows updates in July. Well, it has reportedly been fixed in the recent August patches, so hopefully you won't be seeing that anymore. Of course, it was more of an annoyance because genuinely it was not a cause for concern, but it's nice to not have that dirtying up the Windows event logs. Microsoft has confirmed that the August 2025 security updates are causing severe lag and stuttering issues with NDI streaming software on some Windows 10 and Windows 11 systems. The issue reportedly affects streaming apps, including OBS and NDI tools, especially when display capture is enabled on the source PC. The problem persists even under low bandwidth conditions. These streaming issues are triggered after installing KB 506-3878 and KB 506-3709 security updates on Windows 11 24H2, as well as on Windows 10 21H2 and 22H2. The NDI team has also confirmed the issue, stating that the buggy Windows update causes NDI traffic to drop unexpectedly after deployment. BleepyComputer.com also reported that NDI has provided impacted customers with a temporary workaround while Microsoft is investigating the bug causing this known issue. And I'll share a link to the article by BleepyComputer.com that shares those steps if you want to see them. Hopefully this is something that won't affect too many in enterprise, although streaming tools like OBS could be used by marketing teams, so it may still be relevant to you. Microsoft is seeking further information from customers who reported failure and data corruption issues affecting their solid-state drives and also hard disk drives after installing the August 2025 security update. And I'll come back to that HDD callout because that is new information relative to the story that I covered on last week's episode of the podcast, which was that the August Windows updates were reportedly causing SSD corruption. But those who are encountering this problem are encouraged to contact support for business or use the feedback hub to file a report with Microsoft. Oddly, they're saying that they aren't being contacted about the issue, which seems odd as there has been quite a bit of chatter via the usual channels about this, with some suggesting it is unique to specific models of Samsung SSDs, but with later reports suggesting it also impacts those HDDs, which caught me off guard when researching for this week's episode. So it seems like it might be a little more widespread than initially thought last week. So heads up, I guess. But yeah, there's suggestions that it's certain models of Samsung SSDs. So if you have some older Samsung SSDs in your environment, maybe tread lightly, I guess. BleepyComputer.com reports that Microsoft is working on resolving an Exchange Online issue causing email access problems for Outlook mobile users who use hybrid modern authentication. The issue reportedly began impacting Outlook mobile users on August 17th, causing some mailboxes to crash and preventing affected customers from accessing their email and calendars. The issue may potentially affect users on devices with Intel driver version 32.0.101.69xx versions. Affected customers are advised to use the Microsoft Teams web app as a temporary workaround until the issue is fixed. They've indicated the impact should be pretty limited in scope, so hopefully it's not affecting too many people out there. A critical vulnerability in Docker Desktop for Windows and macOS allows compromising the host by running a malicious container, even if the enhanced container isolation protection is active, according to BleepingComputer.com. The security issue is a server-side request forgery vulnerability that is now identified as CVE 2025 9074, and it gets a 9.3 out of 10 on the severity scale. Docker's own bulletin suggests, quote, a malicious container running on Docker desktop could access the Docker engine and launch additional containers without requiring the Docker socket to be mounted. This could allow unauthorized access to user files on the host system. Enhanced container isolation does not mitigate this vulnerability, end quote. So I'm guessing it's getting such a high severity score due to the fact that it can be accessed unauthorized. It reads like there are some working exploits already for this. Leveraging the vulnerability on macOS does take a bit more effort than Windows reportedly. Fortunately, the vulnerability has been patched in Docker Desktop version 4.44.3, which was released over a week ago. A new version of LibreOffice version 25.8.1 has been released. This version reportedly brings improved interoperability with Microsoft Office file formats like DocX, PPTX, and XLSX. Apparently, users were experiencing bugs when opening and handling these types of files, but the experience should now be solid with this release. Police arrested 7 people last Tuesday after they occupied the office of Microsoft President Brad Smith, protesting the support of the Israeli Defense Forces' use of Azure services. Microsoft told CNBC that it subsequently fired 2 employees due to serious breaches of its company policies and code of conduct. The story I'm referencing for this makes some pretty lofty allegations to potential misuse of Azure services by the IDF too. And Microsoft has told the Guardian newspaper that they are investigating these claims. This is one of those stories where we'll have to wait and see if there is a follow-through and Microsoft shares the results. I guess it's just another example of how tech is so entwined with global affairs. The Guardian reports that doctors have successfully developed an AI-led stethoscope that can detect 3 heart conditions in 15 seconds. The new stethoscope, developed by researchers at Imperial College London and Imperial College Healthcare NHS Trust, can analyze tiny differences in heartbeat and blood flow undetectable to the human ear, and take a rapid ECG at the same time. Details of the breakthrough with the stethoscope were shared at the European Society of Cardiology Annual Congress in Madrid. A study trialing the AI stethoscope involving about 12,000 patients from 200 GP surgeries in the UK looked at those with symptoms such as breathlessness or fatigue. Those examined using the new tool were twice as likely to be diagnosed with heart failure compared with similar patients who were not examined using the technology. Patients were 3 times more likely to be diagnosed with atrial fibrillation, an abnormal heart rhythm that can increase the risk of having a stroke. And they were almost twice as likely to be diagnosed with heart valve disease, which is where 1 or more heart valves do not work properly. This could be a good example, in my opinion, of where AI helps in the monitoring, but really the human doctors need to verify the findings and take the action. I mean, it's great that it can detect things that the human ear cannot detect. However, AI does make mistakes. I mean, I'm banging this drum far too often on this podcast, but I hope this is going to be the start of something great. The BBC reported that Taco Bell is apparently rethinking its use of AI to power drive-through restaurants in the US after some comical videos of the tech making mistakes were viewed by millions. In one clip, a customer was shown seemingly crashing the system by ordering 18,000 water cups, while in another video, a person got increasingly angry as the AI repeatedly asked him to add more drinks to his order. Taco Bell's chief digital and technology officer, Dane Matthews, told the Wall Street Journal that deploying the voice AI has had its challenges, saying, quote, "Sometimes it lets me down, but sometimes it really surprises me," end quote. He went on to say that the firm was learning a lot, but he would now think carefully about where to use AI going forwards, including not using it at a drive-thru. In particular, he said there are times when humans are better placed to take orders, especially when the restaurants get busy. He went on to say, quote, "We'll help coach teams on when to use voice AI and when it's better to monitor or step in," end quote. The issues have been building online as disgruntled customers take to social media to complain about the service, with many pointing out glitches and issues. It's interesting, I guess, to see that the conclusion is maybe use it at certain points, but don't use it at other points. So when there's a high demand, like when the drive-through is busy, it's better to just have a human do it rather than deal with AI possibly making mistakes. Finally, in the news this week, the Wall Street Journal reported that a former Google executive who committed murder suicide with his mother as the victim was having pretty disturbing chats with ChatGPT leading up to the event, with ChatGPT reportedly validating his thoughts regardless of how delusional they were, such as validating a conspiracy theory that he had that there was a surveillance campaign against him. And also, he shared a receipt with ChatGPT from a Chinese restaurant that he thought contained symbols, and ChatGPT validated that it did contain symbols that represented his mother and a demon. Now, I will say that the Wall Street Journal is pretty credible, I think. I do see that some Australian news organizations, as well as like the New York Post, Fox News, and some others have covered the story, so I'm guessing it's safe. But yeah, I found, including this story along with the Taco Bell story, as well as some of the other stories around AI over the last few weeks, it really is just a weird time to be living in and even working in technology. I mean, there's the good. There's that stethoscope example. There's using AI and machine learning to improve like the digital employee experience and actual practical use cases where it shines. But then there's this AI slop, as people are calling it, that really hurts the image of it. And this would be the point that I'd usually do a scripts, tricks, and tips. And you may have heard the sound quality changed in this story. I'm going to skip the scripts, tricks, and tips. Hopefully that's okay. I am on my holiday still, and it is like over 30 degrees here in Thailand where I'm recording. I'm in a hotel room, and I had to turn the air conditioning off for most of the show, so it is roasting in here. So I still have a backlog of scripts, tricks, and tips from last week, but I'm not going to cover them. Apologies for that. I have also been thinking about the future of the podcast and what to do. Um, my sponsors have actually lapsed. I'm still using them. I'm still crediting them at the beginning of the show, but it's because mainly I haven't got off my butt to figure out what I'm going to do going forward. So I'm just kind of going through the motions and doing it the same as I always have for now. But yeah, that was a bit long winded and it's another long episode. I apologize for that. And hopefully, I'll get back to the usual release cadence for the next week's episode. And yeah, the sound quality should be better too, I hope. But thanks for listening.